Gonzaga did exactly what you're supposed to do in a bye game, blasting Long Beach State and taking over as the new #1 team in the country at KenPom.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Happy Thursday and welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode of Locked On Zags is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers who place a $5 bet can get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win. Just visit FanDuel.com today to get started. Well, we got a preview of the Gonzaga women's game against Rice on Thursday evening. We got some news on a pair of alumni as well. But before we get into any of that, we are, of course, going to review Wednesday evening's game between Mark Few's Zags and the Long Beach State 49ers. Talk about what happened in that game. Gonzaga blasted Long Beach State. 84-41 was the final score. And before we get into the good and the bad, and then, of course, the 5 questions we had coming into the game and how those were resolved on Wednesday, we got to start with the story that impacted so many Gonzaga fans for this game, which was it wasn't watchable. It was a huge issue, and I know I've spoken to people who work at Gonzaga, and the indication is that this was a mistake. It wasn't supposed to happen the way that it did, but for those of you who are outside of the Pacific Northwest or who are directly in Spokane, you may not be aware of what happened here, but for local Gonzaga fans in Spokane, the game was on KHQ, as it always is, and there was no issues there. But then for folks out of the market, like people in California or people on the East Coast or anywhere else, ESPN Plus should have continued to work for those people. But people in the Portland area, like myself, people in Boise, I know were impacted by this, and other areas of Washington, like the Tri-Cities and some other spots, were unable to watch this game. It was restricted both from KHQ's perspective, as they only allow people who are in the region to watch it, and it was restricted on ESPN Plus. This is what happened last year, but last year Root Sports was broadcasting Gonzaga games, so you were able to watch them in Portland and I believe Boise and all those other markets. But for this game, that was not the case. It was not watchable for folks in Portland. Seattle, I believe, Fox 13 Plus has some of the games broadcast, so they were able to watch it there. But for many fans, it was not a game that they were able to watch. And I mean, we're talking about the third-ranked team in the country. We're talking about a team that is the #1 team at KenPom. I mean, this is one of the best teams in college basketball. And not only that, we have definitive proof, years of research, that this is one of, if not the most watched college basketball team in the country. People flock to watch Gonzaga games. And having it be blacked out for huge segments of the Gonzaga-specific population. We know that Gonzaga alumni congregate in Boise and in Portland and in the Tri-Cities and in various other places that weren't able to watch this game. I know they're working on rectifying the issue, and I'm not going to just put any specific people on blast. As I'm recording right now, it's the last I heard was that it was either a KHQ or an ESPN Plus issue in terms of one of them was expected to open up the blackout restrictions because they knew this game would be in this situation, and it didn't happen. So mistakes happen. I don't want to sit here and just blast people for it too much, but it's really frustrating that this team is at this point still not being able to be broadcast for huge swaths of their population and fan base. It's just not something that should be happening to a team at this level anymore. Let's talk about the good things we saw in this game. Gonzaga got out to a really fast start, 23-4 after just 10 minutes. Elite defense, not just in the early going, but really throughout the game. Gonzaga's defense looked outstanding. They're all the way up to 18th at KenPom in adjusted defensive efficiency. Again, a team that started at 45th. This is a fantastic defensive squad. And yeah, Long Beach State's not very good. I think if one of your main takeaways from watching this game is that, Long Beach State is bad, that's reasonable. They're not a very good team. Maybe they'll get there eventually under a new coach, but they got beat by Portland. They got beat badly by San Francisco. This is just not a very good basketball team right now. But Gonzaga's defense was great. Forced multiple shot clock violations, really got after them in the second half in particular. I think they were held to like 9 points in the first 12 minutes of the second half, something like that. So lots of good stuff from Gonzaga, again, on the defensive end of the floor. Another good thing was the simple fact that nobody played more than 28 minutes. in this game. And I think that was always a goal. We kind of talked about that, and we'll talk about it more in the question section of the show. But we kind of knew that Gonzaga's coming off of an emotional win on Monday night, a late game. They didn't get into Spokane until 2 a.m. on Tuesday, and they turn around and play a Wednesday evening game. Like, we kind of knew that there was maybe going to be some guys who were a little tired, were a little fatigued, and maybe didn't want to have to push them to play 32, 35, 37 minutes in this game. But the fact that nobody played more than 28 minutes is fantastic. That's what you want in these kind of games. It also gives some of the other guys who didn't play much or at all against San Diego State an opportunity to get out there and get some game reps, like Emmanuel Innocente, who played a little bit against San Diego State, and then Ismaila Diani and Junsook Yo, who both did not play against San Diego State and both got more than 5 minutes of game action in this one. In terms of star performers, Graham Ike and Khalif Battle led Gonzaga with 15 points apiece. Ike scored 15 in just 15 minutes of playing time. Neither were super efficient. Battle was 5 of 13, including 1 of 6 from three. He's always been a bit of a streaky outside shooter, and that's what we've seen, is he can get really hot and knock down 3 or 4 in a row and light the entire arena on fire, or he can miss shot after shot after shot. And that's what he was like at Temple. It's what he was like at Arkansas last year, and it's kind of so far what we've seen a little bit from him here in Spokane. 4 of 4 from the free throw line, though. Ryan Nembhard, 10 points, 7 assists, and 1 turnover for him. Again, the lowest amount of minutes that he's played probably in his Gonzaga career. Quite honestly, I didn't check that, but it's probably close. I think he was about 27 and a half minutes. So for him to get 10 and 7 is still very solid. Gonzaga, once again, outstanding from the free throw line. In this one, 17 of 24 from the line. That continues to be a big area of strength for the Zags, and a much needed one, especially when they play more close contests. Ike was 6 of 7 from the line. Khalif Battle, like I mentioned, 4 of 4. Braden Huff and Nolan Hickman, each 2 of 2 from the line in this one. Zags also had 7 steals. Good to see, again, to them being very active on the defensive end. I really like that most of their steals came in the second half, and in fact, 6 of their 7 steals came from bench players, and 5 of their 7 came from guys who we wouldn't consider part of the rotation. Ismaila Diani had 3 steals for Gonzaga. Emmanuel Innocente had 2. Khalif Battle and Dusty Stromer each had 1. The not so good stuff from this game, Gonzaga had a really sloppy stretch late in the first half of this game. They got outscored 21-16 in the final, I think, 10 minutes of the first half of this game. Just looked sloppy. I think the energy in the building was a little low. That was kind of when I think some of the fatigue and gas started to set in. It's hard when you jump out to a 23-4 lead against a team you're expected to beat by 30 points to kind of keep that energy and enthusiasm going. And I think they just kind of hit a little bit of a lull period. It happens. I would much rather it happen here than happen against some of the better teams Gonzaga is going to play. Obviously, they're unlikely to have that same issue against the UConns and UCLAs and Kentuckys of the world. But, to have that happen and still only get outscored by 5 and then still beat the team by well over 30 points, pretty good sign for this team. They were also 5 of 10 from the free throw line in the first half, which meant they went 12 of 14 in the second half. Just a weird, fluky thing. Probably not anything to be overly concerned about. The other not so good thing from this game, another not good performance from Michael Ajayi. In this one, he only scored 2 points and 3 rebounds. He had 3 fouls, so he had to sit for large chunks of this game. 2 assists for him. He was 1 of 6 from the field, including 0 of 4 from the three-point line and 0 of 2 from the free throw line. Just a bad game. Not really anything else to add to that. It's not a sign of crisis. It's not a switching of the starting lineup once again to bring Ben Gregg back in. It's just a bad game. I don't think it's anything to worry about long-term with Ajayi, but he didn't look particularly great in Gonzaga's San Diego State game either. So hopefully something where he finds his stroke and becomes a huge part of this team's success in the battle for Atlantis. Well, folks, before this game, we had 5 questions we plan to answer on today's show after the game. We're going to get into those coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, do you struggle to find the perfect gift during the holidays? Are you tired of wasting money on useless clutter that nobody really needs? Let me tell you about something my family bought for my mother-in-law last year. Skylight Frame is the touchscreen digital photo frame your whole family will love. Upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear in just seconds. Seamless sharing, invite friends and family to easily share photos via the free Skylight mobile app or email. There is no account or subscription required. You can add new photos straight from your phone from anywhere. It only takes a tap on your phone to send new photos to a frame across the country. It's the fastest, easiest way to keep loved ones in the loop. They'll feel so much more connected to you. Gift mode makes it a very meaningful, personalized gift. You can preload it with memories without even opening up the box. Surprise them with old sentimental photos as soon as it's plugged in, and setup is super easy. And now, as a special limited time offer for our listeners, get $20 off your purchase of a skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com/college. That's skylightframe.com/college. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/college. Folks, get ready to tackle the college hoops action this season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and you will get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. Gonzaga is still the front runner for the battle for Atlantis, plus 135 to take home the trophy down in the Bahamas. Arizona's next at plus 180. Indiana is at plus 600. If you like those odds for Gonzaga, if you like any of the other odds for upcoming games on Thursday, Friday into Feast Week, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. As a reminder, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. It's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, folks, segment 2. Still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, and we are still talking Gonzaga versus Long Beach State on Wednesday, recapping Gonzaga's 84-41 win over the 49ers. We had 5 questions we wanted to have answered from this game. We're going to talk about them here. We already talked about a little bit of it in the first segment, but we'll get into the details here. Question number 1 was, can Gonzaga find the outside shot? And the answer is sort of yes, no, a little bit. They made 9 threes. Considering they only made 5 against San Diego State, I think you feel pretty good. 9 threes is a pretty good amount for Gonzaga. They did take 27 of them, so they're 33%. You're hoping Gonzaga shoots better than 33% for the season. You're hoping they shoot better than 33% in games that, frankly, matter more, where the three-point shooting is going to be more. You're not going to be able to win easily without it. Let's put it that way. So I'm not overly concerned about this. It's not like that's terrible. It's 5 of 27 would be more concerning, but we still have seen some guys who are really struggling. The new players for Gonzaga, the new rotation players, I should say, Michael Ajayi and Khalif Battle were a combined 1 of 10 from 3 in this game. You take them out, basically the whole rest of the team was pretty good. Ben Gregg still has yet to make a 3 this season. He was 0 of 1 in this game. Again, he was 100% on 2-pointers, 0% on 3-pointers. I believe that is the 3rd game this season where Ben has made all his 2s and missed all his 3s. I don't think that that's overly alarming, but it is odd to say the least, especially for a player who was 37.5% each of the last 2 years from beyond the arc. Outside of those guys, though, Ryan Nembhard was 2 of 4. It's been great to see him shoot the rock far more consistently this year. He's still over 40%. Last year, as a reminder, he shot 15% in the first half of the year. So to see him over 40 right now is phenomenal. Nolan Hickman found his shot. He struggled against San Diego State, was 2 of 3 in this game. Really nice to see that. Dusty Stromer was 2 of 5. Continues to be a solid and more high volume 3-point shooter off the bench, a role that we kind of expected he would have this year, especially after Steele Venters went down with the injury. But we kind of knew that, hey, Dusty's going to need to be more aggressive, more assertive, hunt for his shot more in a reserve role. And that is exactly what has happened. And it's been a huge boost for the Zags. Graham Ike took a pair of 3s. He knocked one down. He's good for a made 3 every week or so, it seems like. And that's what we got here against the Beach. And then Joaquim Reyes-Moore comes into the game, and that man loves to shoot. He loves to get the crowd going. He's played 2 games so far, and he is a firecracker who loves to put the ball in the net, and he had a 3-pointer in this one as well. Key number 2 was, is Graham Ike here to stay? And again, verdict still kind of out. Still kind of out. He had that tremendous second half against San Diego State, 20 points in the second half alone against the Aztecs. Gonzaga needed him to be the player that we knew he's capable of, and he delivered. In this game, he was fine. He was fine. He didn't look great in the first half. 7 points, 3 boards, only played 10 minutes. But he's 2 of 5 from the field, 1 of 2 from 3, both his 3-point attempts there. But he was 2 of 3 from the free throw line. So 7 points in the first half in 10 minutes of action. And then he played about the first 5 minutes of the second half, and he scored 8 points in 5 minutes. He scored 8 points in 4 minutes, actually, in the second half. And then he was pretty much benched for the rest of the game because they didn't need to continue to play him. They played Diani a lot. They played more of Braden Huff. So he finishes the game with 15 points, 5 rebounds, a block, a foul, and a turnover. 1 foul in 15 minutes is pretty good. 15 and 5 is not bad. 6 of 7 from the free throw line is great. Making a 3 is great. 4 of 9 from the field is not great. So we saw some good, some bad. We're still waiting for Graham to be more consistently dominant. Hopefully a 3-game stretch in Atlantis gets him fully right, and he can go out there and take it to West Virginia's bigs and take it to Umar Ballo if that's who they play in the second game, and take it to Toby Awaka and Mo Krivas for Arizona if they play them in the championship, and really be that guy we know that he is, because we haven't quite seen that from him yet, at least not on a consistent basis. Key number 3 was wondering if Gonzaga would be able to force 20 turnovers out of Long Beach State. Long Beach State finished the game with 16, so pretty close. I think they only had 5 in the first half. But they had a bunch of turnovers in the second half. Again, that's when Gonzaga got a lot of their steals. Some of them were shot clock violations. Some of them were live ball turnovers like the steals. Some of them were just mistakes by Long Beach State because they're not a particularly great team. But Zags finished with 20 points off of turnovers. That's fantastic. Any game you can get 20 points off of turnovers is a good game. Again, we already mentioned the 7 steals. 3 of them from Diani, 2 of them from Innocente, a pair each from Dusty and Khalif Battle. And like we said, Gonzaga's defense moves up to the top 20 at KenPom right now. And yes, Long Beach State, not a great opponent. A lot of good teams or average teams would still play really well defensively against them. But Gonzaga still, KenPom adjusts for that, and it's still moved up in the defensive standings because of how good they were on that end of the floor in this game. Number 4 and 5 regarded some of the deeper bench players. Question 4 was, will Mark Few empty the bench early in this one? And question 5 was, will a non-rotation player end up the talk of the night? So we're going to kind of take those two together a little bit. Yes, Mark Few was able to empty the bench a little early in this game. The only non-8-man rotation player who played in the first half was Emmanuel Innocente. And Gonzaga's borderline a 9-man rotation at this point. Innocente is probably going to play pretty much every game. Whereas I think Diani and Yo are probably only going to play like 22, 25 games this season, maybe a little bit more than that. Whereas I think Innocente will end up with more games played than both of them, just because I think he's going to be we're going to put him in the first half to kind of give a boost of energy defensively, that kind of role that we've seen from him already in early going. But in this game, Innocente played about 13 minutes. Diani played about 9. Jun Sukio played about 5. And then the walk-ons, Q played 3 minutes. Noah Holland played about 1 minute. Still haven't seen Joe Few. Might be an injury there. I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but he is not on the floor in this one. And we saw some good performances. Innocente did not score, but he had 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and 1 turnover. He is a absolute energy guy, loves flying around the floor. I love watching him play. He's going to be a really fun piece for this team, especially as he kind of hones it in, getting, when he gets a bigger role next year. Diani, same thing. He's so young and so big. He is an absolute load on the court. If you didn't watch the game or you were unable to watch the game, there's a highlight posted by Gonzaga I saw it on Instagram, it's probably on their Twitter, Blue Sky, everything else too. Diani got a steal and rumbled down the floor to get a dunk. And the man he's so big and so strong and so fun to watch. And when he kind of fills into his body a little bit more and he gets more comfortable with the college rules, he's going to be a dude. 5 points, 3 steals, 2 boards for him, 2 of 3 from the field, 1 of 2 from the free throw line. He did pick up 2 fouls in 9 minutes. The fouls are going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem. And this year, that's fine. That's fine. If he can get 4 fouls in 7 minutes, it doesn't really matter because he's not playing 7 minutes unless Gonzaga's got a comfortable lead, but he's going to have to learn how to he reminds me a little bit of Karnowski in that way. He's not as gifted as Karnowski yet. Maybe he'll get there. But it took Shem a couple of years to figure out how to not foul. And once he did figure it out, he became an elite defensive player. And I think Diani will do that as well. I think he's got more natural shot blocking ability than Karnowski. So I think there's a potential for him to be a really impactful player. Yo played 5 minutes, did not record any stats. He was plus 10, which was higher in the plus minus category than Innocente or Diani. Plus minus in one game in a 5-minute stretch doesn't really matter, but I thought it was interesting. Q played a couple minutes in this one, 3 minutes. He had 3 points. He had another pump fake step into a 3-point shot that he knocked down. He also had a pair of rebounds in this one. I love watching him get in the game because you can tell he's not just there to we'll just pass the ball around. He wants to score. He wants to get the crowd going. He wants to scream and flex and shout, and it's fun to watch. And then Holland, minute and a half of action for him, did not record any stats. It's not really enough time, especially at the very end of a game for anything to happen. So we still wait for Noah to score his first points in the Gonzaga uniform. But yeah, the talk of the game, I think Q is always going to be the talk when he hits a three-pointer. That's going to be a fun storyline. He's going to start getting the, we want Q chance. If they haven't already started in the kennel, they will. I can promise you that. But I think Deani was also a big storyline here. I mean, for him to get 3 steals in a 7-minute or 9-minute stretch of basketball, to look good defensively, to get out in transition the way he did, he's going to be an absolute dude. And I'm really excited about his future in Spokane. Well, Lisa Fortier and the Lady Zags host Rice tonight at the kennel, a chance to move over 500 on the season. We got a preview of that game and a few other things coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to everyone. All you do is pick more or less on at least 2 players' given stat for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. I'm grateful personally that PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my winnings as fast as 15 minutes. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play your first $5. You don't even have to win to get the bonus. It's guaranteed. So I had two players yesterday on Wednesday night. I had Graham Ike over 13.5 points. Boom, hit that. I was too risky to gamble on a freshman and Rutgers freshman, Dylan Harper. It was over 17.5 points. He finished with 15, so I didn't get it there. But Graham, he led me in the right spot. Harper just let me down. There's a lot of fun stuff just like that. You can combine fun bets, all sorts of good stuff. I love using PrizePicks. Folks, download the app today and use that code LOCKEDONCollege, and you'll get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Now, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, pivoting away from Gonzaga's game against Long Beach State to talk about the women's team who is hosting Rice at the kennel Thursday evening, 6 p.m. The game will be on ESPN Plus and KHQ. I won't make any extra jokes. We've talked enough about the issues there. I was able to watch the women's game last week on ESPN Plus in the Portland area, so hopefully that won't be an issue tonight. Rice is 4-1 on the year. They have wins over Sam Houston State, North Carolina A&T, South Alabama, and Houston. Houston is not as good on the women's side as they are on the men's side, but that's still a win over a power conference team for Rice. Their losses to South Dakota State, who is a very good mid-major team, one of the best mid-major women's basketball programs consistently. Gonzaga plays them every year for a reason. And Rice only lost that game by 2. So it's a pretty good sign for this Owls club. They're averaging 65 points per game, but they are shooting just 28% from 3 as a team. They're only 40% from the field. They are not a very efficient scoring team. They don't score a ton of points, but they are good on the defensive end of the floor. Meanwhile, for Gonzaga, they're averaging a little more, 67 points per game, shooting much better from 3, just under 45% as a team for the Lady Zags from beyond the arc. Of course, the stud, Yvonne Ejim, 17.3 points, 9.3 boards, 2 assists per game for her. And then Allie Turner, freshman from St. Louis, has been a revelation for Lisa Fortier's team as they're battling injuries with Taylor Dalton out, a few other players missing games as well. Turner goes out and in her first 4 games is averaging 16.3 points, 3.8 boards, 2.3 assists, shooting 58% from 3 in those first 4 games. The Zags are 2-2 with wins over Montana and Wyoming, and their losses to a pair of ACC teams in Stanford and Cal. Looking forward to another fun game and a chance for the Lady Zags to move to 3-2 on the year. We'll get a quick recap of it on Friday's show as well. A couple other updates going on around the Gonzaga space, a pair of alumni, one on the women's basketball side, one on the baseball side. We'll start with Courtney Vandersloot. For those of you who have not been paying attention to this development in the WNBA and women's basketball, there is a new 3-on-3 league that will start this winter, the Unrivaled League. It was started by Brianna Stewart, Courtney's teammate with the New York Liberty. It is effectively an opportunity for star women's basketball players to continue playing in the off-season without going overseas. For those of you, again, most women's basketball players, even the ones who are highly successful in the WNBA season goes over the summer, and so they're off all winter. and they're not making, some of them are making enough money to just take the winter off, but a lot of them continue to play. They go overseas. Obviously, Brittany Griner was playing overseas when she was arrested, and that whole fiasco that happened, it has made a lot of women's players feel uneasy or uncomfortable about traveling overseas. Vandersloot in particular spoke out about not wanting to travel overseas anymore, in part because of that. So they started a league here. And it's a 3-on-3 league, so it's a little bit different, obviously, but they're expecting a lot of excitement. There's 6 teams, 6 players per team, so 36 athletes participating in this league, and it's the best of the best. The names that everybody knows on the women's basketball side, they are participating in this 3-on-3 tournament. It should be a lot of fun. Courtney, they announced the rosters on Wednesday. Courtney is on Team Mist BC, and her teammates are Brianna Stewart, again, who started the league, Jewel Lloyd, who plays for the Seattle Storm, for folks out there who watch that team. Aaliyah Edwards, who plays with Caitlin Clark on Indiana. And then Dejanay Carrington and Rakia Jackson. That is the 6 players on this team with Courtney. It's going to be so much fun to watch. I'm happy that Courtney's still playing. I'm happy that she's not going overseas. I'm really excited to see how this league develops. And then last but not least, don't do a lot of Zags baseball updates very often, but I saw this come through on Wednesday. Eli Morgan, former Gonzaga starting pitcher who was drafted by the Cleveland Guardians way back in 2017. He was traded on Wednesday to the Chicago Cubs. He, again, played with Cleveland. He was drafted by them in 2017, so he's been with the Guardians organization for 8 years at this point. All told, he played with Cleveland in parts of the 2021, 22, 23, and 2024 MLB seasons. 161 total games pitched for Morgan, 265 innings. He had 18 wins, 12 losses, a 3.97 ERA, and a 1.16 WHIP, and 262 strikeouts across his career. Very good numbers. Eli was used primarily as a middle reliever, which means he comes in usually after the starting pitcher, but before the last pitchers of the game, 6th, 7th inning, somewhere in there. He was phenomenal last year for Cleveland, 42 innings with the Guardians, 1.93 ERA, 0.97 WHIP, and 34 strikeouts. He's really fun pitcher to watch. He doesn't throw super hard. He's got a really, really nice changeup, which is devastating against left-handed hitters. Chicago Cubs got a good one. I know that many of you, I've spoken to many of you who are Chicago Cubs fans and Gonzaga fans, because I remember asking, that seems like a strange combination, but hope that this is an extra kind of excitement going into next season. Eli Morgan, fun player, fun guy, good baseball player, and I think it's going to be a fun fit for him in Chicago with the Cubs. Joins the same division as Marco Gonzalez, assuming Marco stays with Pittsburgh. I think he's actually a free agent, but both Pittsburgh and the Cubs are in the NL Central, so we'll see if Marco ends up somewhere else next year or not. But we know if we're watching Zags in the MLB next year that we're going to be tuning into some Cubs games, because that's where Eli Morgan is going to be. All right, that's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Folks, thank you so much for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Special shout out to those everyday listeners. We'll be back on Friday. We'll be talking more about some of the fun games this weekend going on, getting you ready for, of course, Gonzaga's trip to the Bahamas and their first matchup in the battle for Atlantis against West Virginia. All sorts of fun stuff coming your way. Thanks again for listening, folks. And until next time, as always, go Zags.